Now I'm going to welcome Carol Davis as our next speaker. Are you there, Carol? Hopefully she's there. There she is. Carol, hello. How lovely to see you again. Do we have audio on Carol?
Nice to see you too, Jan.
Lovely.
I'm here.
A little bit more volume would be great, thank you. On my side, Carol, don't I? Carol, many of you will know Carol M. Davis. She is renowned again in our field. She is Professor Emerita at the University of Miami, the Miller School of Medicine. Carol is a prolific author and editor and has 2 doctorates to her name. Carol has been very excited, I know, about today, haven't you, Carol? As excited as I've been.
Indeed.
Yeah. And can we just have Carol, can you say something, Carol? I don't think I'm hearing you very well.
How is this? I've got my microphone right underneath me.
Say that again, Carol.
I've got my microphone right underneath me.
Yes, I think it was a slight problem at my end that I couldn't hear you. That's all.
Okay.
That's
good.
fine. Thank you.
Great.
So, Carol, I'm going to hand over to you, and you are going to speak to us about the client, stroke patient, and practitioner experience, the effects of focused attention and intention on interoception. I'm very much looking forward to this. Over to you, Carol. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. We're going to be talking about the resonance, the energetic connection between the client or the patient and the practitioner. And we're looking at attention, and intention on biotensegral receptivity. Hold on a second. I'm not able to get my slides to move. Here we go. The key points that I'm going to be making: all creation vibrates. And Joanne introduced this so beautifully this morning. Vibrations have waves, and waves resonate. They combine with one another. Only about 4% of all that is in the universe is known to us. People emit energy waves and are infused with energy at all times. Fascia integrity, perhaps a different phrase, and I'll talk about that, is the structural and functional container of these energies. Fascia integrity, a term coined by Joanne Avison and John Sharkey. Resonance, or combining of waves, occurs, intended or not, between the therapist and patient or client. And science reveals the effects of resonant exchange. Manual and movement therapies can improve these effects, and that's what we're all about. Now, I say this is a hypothesis, but most people believe it because all creation vibrates, because all creation is made of atoms. And we know that atoms are the building blocks of all that is on the planet, and atoms vibrate. And the density of the creation correlates with the sum vibrational frequency. Everything vibrates at a different frequency. Each cell, as Joanne mentioned, and my other speakers will mention too, each cell in living structures vibrates at its own unique frequency. But all that is in the universe that's known to us is only 4%, 96%. It should be 98%, 96% of all is dark to us, dark matter and dark energy. And there are different kinds of energy in the world. These will all seem familiar to you. Potential energy, stored energy, ready to be released. Kinetic energy, the property of moving particles or mass like electric energy in our bodies. Thermal energy, the dynamic energy present due to temperature changes, and we're going to show a demonstration of that in a minute. Chemical energy, energy stored and released in chemical reactions going on all the time inside our bodies. Nuclear energy, energy released from the nucleus of the atom. And then finally, bodily energies. And this is where we're going to focus today. There are three forms of bodily energies as explicated by Feinstein and Eden, and I'm going to be talking about that mainly, and that reference is in my references as well. Electrical energy, the movement of electrons through the system, electromagnetic energy, the waves of energy around us, and subtle energy, subtle quantum particles, photons and electrons in our body working constantly to create this living, vibrating fascial web. First, electrical energy, the movement of electrons. Of course, we see it all the time, electrons moving into our houses to light up our lights, to light up everything that's in our atmosphere. Electricity is a secondary source. The source comes from someplace else. All energy on the planet originally comes from the sun. The energy that comes into our homes might be coming from power plants of a different sort, but the energy that we see in our homes is a secondary. The energy that we see in our bodies is secondary because it comes from a different source. Each cell in our body stores and emits electrical energy. The charge of the cell can be changed by ion pumps that move through the bilipid cellular membrane. And ions are unstable atoms which carry electrical charge. Electrical activity drives breath, all the vibrations in the body, breath, nerve conduction, digestion, muscle, and fascial function. Vibration is the key to all flow. James Oshman says this in Energy Medicine, the New Science. If you leave vibration out of the study of the body, you leave out the key component to understanding how all this works. It's all about energy and resonance and vibration, whether it's breath, whether it's blood, the flow of the blood, nerve transmission, forming the electrons along the nerves, neurotransmitters and neuropeptides chemistry to facilitate nerve action, cytokines, little messenger molecules going from cell to cell to tell the cells what to do, driven by this bioelectric field, steroids and hormones, adjusting things in our body all the time to keep things in balance according to the orchestral conductor and the vibration of thoughts. Many times people leave thoughts out, and Bruce Lipton is a marvelous lecturer about this. If you're interested in how do our thoughts affect the vibration within our cells, within our bodies, and the electrical field, very, very important part. You can kind of intuit this. If your thoughts are negative or depressed or angry, there's a very different vibrational flow than if your thoughts are excited and enthusiastic. Let's talk about electromagnetic energies first. These are self-propagating waves reflected or emitted from objects that transmit energy. Now, Joanne showed you a model of the electromagnetic biofield, that model she showed you in the introduction. I'm going to show you a picture of it in just a second. It's a vast spectrum. The electromagnetic energies within our system is a vast spectrum. It's not just one kind of wavelength, from radio waves, slower waves, to microwave, infrared light, to visible light, to ultraviolet light, and then to X-rays and gamma rays, which are also invisible. These waves travel as waves through the air, but they're absorbed by matter as a photon. And this is the quantum mystery. How could something be a solid and a wave at the same time? Well, sunlight comes to us as photons and is absorbed in our bodies as a particle. And here we have a lovely description of the different frequencies from radio waves all the way up to gamma rays, very high frequency, and just in the very small portion of there, reminding us that what we can see in the world, 4% of all that is visible to us. What about subtle energies? These are energies known because of their effects, even though we can't detect them directly. James Oschman, in his book, Energy Medicine, I keep mentioning this book, and I should show you, Energy Medicine, the New Science. If you're interested in the science behind this, get James Oschman's book, because this is the laboratory science, the reported science of most of what we're talking here today. Energies known because of their effects, even though we cannot detect them directly. And he gives an example of detecting the speed of transmission of a stimulus on an acupuncture point on the bottom of the foot up to the top of the brain faster than any neural transmission could give it to us. So that's how we know it's quantum speed. It's not neural speed. As fast as neural speed is, this is faster. And all of us emit energies and are infused with energy. And the energy fields they work in concert, governing all the fundamental biological processes. There's the biofield, the local fields, and the energy pathways, the electrical, electromagnetic, and subtle energies present in all of us. And here's this marvelous Alex Gray illustration of these fields. We have the biofield, the electromagnetic field that surrounds the body, made up of all of these other energies, as well as the energy coming in from the Akashic field. And unfortunately, this is two-dimensional. It surrounds and permeates the entire system. So as you saw with Joanne, that model, it's four-dimensional because it's three-dimensional and it folds in over on top of itself, surrounds and permeates the entire system. And we feel that this is the system that may hold and transmit information to the whole organism, that the energy out here is a hologram of us, and the energy from the wisdom of the Akashic field comes through into our system through this field. And then we have local fields, the vortexes of biophysical energy, the chakras, down through the central spirals of our midline, permeating specific areas, coordinated with different glands of the body. And they interact too with the biofield. And then we have energy pathways, these meridians that acupuncturists have chronicled for ages, for centuries. And Helena Langevin and Yandau correlated this with fascial planes. You may want to take a look at that article. It's in my references, correlating these meridians with fascial planes. It's somewhat linear. We know that nothing in the body is linear. Everything is spiraling all the time, but it helps us to be able to see this diagram as such. But remember, all of these energies are from the micro down to in the nucleus of every single one of our 35 to 75 trillion cells, all the way out to the skin and beyond the skin. As you can see, our fields go way, way out, 6 to 8 feet, connecting with the Akashic field that surrounds us, that is part of the dark energy. What about biotensegrity? Well, you hear us talking about this because this is really the explanation of the dynamic energy that infuses living structures. And it's the foundation of life in all cellular function. The fascia functions because it is energized by biotensegral energy in this compression and tension and compression web that creates these volumes, these vacuoles that you see in strolling under the skin. And that energy, which it starts at the moment of conception and functions to charge this, opening up following the blueprint of the embryo, and open and allowing the embryo to take shape within the uterus, and then never stopping, always charging this tension, compression, and the result of that, the sum of that, until the moment we die. That's a dynamic that's always infusing every single function in our bodies. This is just a structural representation of the tension and compression. As Levin says, I never saw a icosahedron or any kind of tensegral model inside the body. This is how we make sense of the tension and compression that's working. The sum of the balance of the primal force between tension and compression in continuous dynamic balance. And this we call fascia integrity. Avison and Sharkey coined this term, the combination of biotensegrity within the fascia, which is the foundation of all living structures, not just human beings. It's present in the embryo before conception. And Joanne mentioned the name Harold Saxton Burr. There, in the 1930s at Yale, he had an instrument where he said he was looking at salamanders, and he saw a blueprint of the salamander on the embryo of the salamander. And just like the blueprint of the oak tree is in the acorn. And he said, when the sperm hits the egg, then that energy infuses the DNA to unfold in that blueprint as instructed. Upon conception, fascia integral energy becomes the driving force for the DNA self-evolving, self-development, self-creation. It's a product of the continuous dynamic between the tension and the compression energies, which are constantly adapting to external and internal forces, primarily to gravity, but also internal forces within the body. And it's present from the nucleus, the micro, out to the skin and beyond the cell, the nucleus of the cell to the electromagnetic biofield. So if this is happening in us and in our clients or patients, we know that waves are going to come into resonance with one another. So how well do you connect with your client or patient? Let's take a look at this. The effect of resonance of our fields as you and your fields approach the fields of your client or patient. What are you aware of? Put yourself in a position now where you're treating and you haven't yet met your patient, okay, or your client. They're either on the floor or they're waiting for you to do an examination if you're a manual therapist. What are you thinking about as you approach them? You may have just left a previous client. Have you washed your hands and allowed the energy from the past client to escape? Or are you thinking about something else, something that somebody just said to you before you walk into the room or walk into the treatment area? What are you noticing? You're about to step through a threshold into a different experience. When you cross that threshold, it's good to center yourself. And here is a centering prayer that a physician has written. It's reported by Joan Halifax, wonderful Buddhist scholar. And her name is at the end. I'll give you her name. As she enters her new space, this physician, as I enter this new space, she prays or asks, may I, and centers herself in being quiet. May I see and be seen. May I touch and be touched. May I speak and be spoken to. May I feel and be felt. May I experience and be experienced, that we may both become whole, that we may both become whole. The horizontal relationship, the resonance of the biofields, the immediate presence to the other in an attitude of mystery, of inquiry, of curiosity, of willingness. And that creates a resonance from the heart and an attention that immediately puts one into resonance of wanting to help, of safety. And this is Carol Milligan, a physician, as quoted from Joan Halifax, and that's in the references for you. And so there we have the centering down the center when we pray a prayer like this or say a prayer like this. We center the energy within ourselves, and it radiates out to a group, to anyone. We don't have to be touching hands. The energy radiates out, and patients or clients can feel it immediately. I knew you were coming before I heard you. I heard your steps. I felt you coming. So where is this energy received from each other? Is it received on the skin? Does it go into the fascia? If so, how dense? All the way down to the core? Does it touch the nerves? Do these waves affect the nerves? How about the brain? Is it just in the somatosensory cortex, or does it affect the insular cortex, the feeling brain, just the motor cortex? Does it go to individual cells? You know the answer to this, don't you? You cannot imagine how deep this goes. Now, here's my colleague, Richard Hardy, Barnes myofascial release therapist, a marvelous man from California. He invited me to share this with you in showing how manual therapy especially can affect the patient that we're working on, very light touch, through the heat and the energy of our hands being transmitted to our patient. Now, let me set this up. In this beginning, you see him locating his fingers at the sphenoid and the occiput. What he's going to show you, we're going to start down at the knee. This is an infrared camera, and it measures heat. And the whiter the energy, the hotter it is. But let's start at the beginning here. And I want Richard's voice to be off of here. But what I want you to notice, this is the timer, 47 seconds, 48, 49 seconds. Forget about that one. Notice the blue of his hands. His fingers are cooler. This is the patella. This is the camera measuring over the patella at 91.9 Fahrenheit. And notice that his arms have a higher heat than his fingers. But as he just places his hands over the skin, a very gentle compression, Barnes says, go down to where the patient pushes back, and then separate your hands until the collagen stops you, and then stay there. And now watch, in a minute, notice how the change in his fingers are getting warmer. As his infrared energy transmits into the patient, and the patient heats up, and the exchange, the resonance, is right there down to the nucleus of the cells underneath. In the interest of time, I'm going to move ahead a little bit to 3 minutes, and you can see the hands are warmer. It's warming up in here, in around the area. And I'm going to move up a little bit more to 6 minutes. And now look, his hands are bright red and bright white, as is the area that he's had his hands over. And that's why Barnes says 3 to 5 minutes really opens up the tissue, helps to melt that polysaccharide ground substance through piezoelectric effect, through thixotropy, makes it thinner so that we have more compliance in the ground substance. And then he takes his hands off, and I'm going to try and get it right where he takes his hands off. And you can see let's see if I can get that here. There. If there's any doubt about resonance, that could be my whole talk, couldn't it? There it is. We look at the difference in the area of now this is the leg. Now he's going to go up to the head. He's going to move up to the head. And if you could see a little bit, let me get him down a little bit farther when he first comes up to the head. the energy has moved up into the patient's body, in the whole web. It's moved up into the system. And so when he comes up to the head, he places his hands, one's hands on the sphenoid, one's on the occiput. The nose is a little bit cooler, you can see. But look at the resonance in the throat area, and look at the resonance in the forehead. We didn't get a picture of the forehead before he started, but I can be pretty assured that it wasn't this bright light when the patient first lay down on the table. And so this is all to say that there is a web, that our energy disperses through the web. Every time I place my hands on a patient, I think of Richard and his hands, and I see the infrared energy going into the patient. And I say, okay, you do the work. You do the work. And I listen, and I become like a curious cat waiting to see what's the fascia going to do? How's the fascia going to reorganize itself under my hands? And then I listen, and I get messages about what about the pelvis, and where something's happening over there in the right shoulder. And who knows where those messages come from? I check out with the patient. Oh yeah, I feel that over in my right shoulder. I've been doing this for 40 years, so you can imagine I have lots and lots of experience with patients confirming that, yes, as a matter of fact, you were right. And so let's switch for a second. We could just stay there and just talk about that. But let's switch for a second to attention and intention, because this is work by Shapiro and Schwartz. Again, it's in the references. And we're going to be talking about how we attend to ourselves, that centering prayer and others can be health promoting, or it can be harmful. You know this. You know that when you come in the room or into the gym area or the treatment area, and you're upset about something, you know that energy is going to be conveyed, and it's not going to be useful for you in trying to bring about the change that you're looking for. Conscious intention to infuse attention with mindfulness qualities, mindfulness meditation you've probably heard of, generosity, openness, gentleness, empathy, loving kindness, rather than the need for perfection or the need for judgment or to fix somebody. This mindfulness qualities, the intention and attention with mindfulness qualities, Shapiro and Schwartz document that this may be more health promoting, and they have some science to direct you to. Through directing intention toward mindfulness qualities and systemic perspectives, the whole web, a more accepting, compassionate, and systematic approach is brought to self-regulation. That's what puts us at the top of the scale. We can self-regulate, and health. So now let's switch for a second to this idea about the biofield. There is science to show this, and I realize that I want to ground this in science. And so I'm going to be talking to you about some of the science. It's all in the references. I might be going a little too fast for you. When English is your second language, I'll try to remember to slow down. But the concept of biofield regulation offers a shift from the mechanical chemistry, people as machines view of biology, to an information-based view. The fascial web is a web of information. That's what photons are, and electrons are. They're information packets to tell cells what to do. The biofield may be considered one such multi-level organizational concept in which information flows within and between the various levels of the organism. In contrast, a wealth of information exchange, much like a conversation between the elements of these various levels of order, the whispering between cells and other units of life, is critical to sustaining life and promoting healing. The biofield may be considered the language of life. And this is Feinstein and Eden, the biofield, the language of life. Now, Hammerschlag and Jane, clinical studies of the biofield therapies, and they define biofield therapies as non-invasive, practitioner-mediated therapies. They explicitly work with the biofield. In some way, the practitioner is working with the field of energy of both the practitioner and the client to stimulate a healing response in the client. And healing response in the biotensegrity view is just fascia reorganizing itself to be more efficient. There are difficulties in conducting studies according to randomized controlled trials methods. Of course, the dosing element, the time and intensity, hands on, hands off, trying to match patients, trying to do the same treatment to everybody, the type of delivery. We can't match all that. The randomized controlled trial is a house of cards when you're looking at people studies. But promising studies have been found. We've looked at some Petri dish studies about the effect of therapeutic waves on the biofield of cells. Proximally practiced biofield therapies where hands are close to the surface, demonstrated strong evidence for reducing self-reported pain intensity by visual analytical scale in a variety of patients, including the elderly and those with chronic pain. Again, these references, Reiki and therapeutic touch, are in the back of this presentation. Biofield therapies may be particularly promising for alleviating pain intensity as compared to sham treatments. And I'm going to give you an example of that right now. Gronowitz, the study on therapeutic touch treated cells. Now, these are fascial cells, bone, tendon, and fascia in Petri dish. Gronowitz studied therapeutic touch treated cells, bone, tendon, and fascia in Petri dishes. The therapeutic touch, TT, versus the sham. Now, the therapeutic touch therapists were doing their attention and intention on the cells. The sham therapists were placing their hands, as the experimental therapists did, but they counted backwards from 1,000. They weren't attending and intending anything toward the cells themselves. The therapeutic touch cells increased significantly in number when compared to the sham. So then they tried the same with human osteoblasts, those cells that form bone, versus bone cancer cells, malignant cells. Would the therapeutic touch increase the osteoblast and increase the bone cancer cells? No. The therapeutic touch increased the DNA synthesis and cell differentiation and mineralization in the osteoblast, the normal osteoblast, but significantly decreased cell differentiation and mineralization in the cancer cells. A direct therapeutic effect doing the same treatment on those cells. What about the effect of these therapies on interoception, the nervous system that has to do with feeling? This is a really astounding study. I thank David Lazondak for turning me on to this article. It's the Sarah Talley article. If you've heard me speak in the last year, you've probably heard me mention this article. Very profound. The effect of continuous touch on brain functional connectivity is modified by the operators, the therapists, tactile attention. They measured the effect of the thought process, the cognitive status of the patient, the attention that the patient was giving, on the interoceptive nervous system. The thought process of the therapist, the attention the therapist was given on the interoceptive nervous system of the patient. Is what the therapist thinking affecting the feeling state of the patient? So the therapists, there were two groups. There was focused, gentle, therapeutic manual therapy for 20 minutes, measured by functional MRI in the interoceptive system, the posterior cingulate cortex of the right insula and right inferior frontal gyrus. So they were measuring the effect of this touch, this attention and intention touch on the interoceptive, the calming, the relaxing nervous system. The experimental group, The therapist focused on the quality of touch, attention and intention, the way we do when we treat, when we're treating well. There was another group, a control group, and the therapist had the same hand placements, but they had ear muffs over their ears, and there was a clanging. And so they couldn't direct their attention well on their hands. They had to pay, this intermittent clanging was interfering. They called that non-focused touch. And what's the result? The insular cortex, we found through these functional MRIs, is active in patients receiving touch from bottom up, what's coming from the body, afferent C fibers throughout the many afferent C fibers throughout the whole body, and can be modified by top-down awareness of what you're feeling in this received affective touch. The prolonged focused touch induced an increased relaxation, which is, of course, what we want with our clients and patients, of the interoceptive system, but not so with the non-focused touch. The interoceptive system did not respond in the same way to the non-focused touch. So when you're thinking about the laundry or picking something up after work, or why your spouse was critical of you this morning, that's not having the same effect on your manual therapy or your movement therapy of the patient, as if you're tuning in to what's happening here and how can I attend and intend with compassion in this moment. So let's take a look at the role of manual and movement therapies on energy resonance, which is what we've really been talking about. Fascia lovingly invites us to assist in reorganizing itself for efficiency. That's what we're doing. We're not healing per se. We're not inserting energy in anybody. What we're doing is we're resonating with the energy of the client, and the fascia then picks this up. And the fascia, with a mind of its own, is responding to this touch and reorganizing itself, this soft touch, not hard or intrusive movement. No, soft touch and movement can improve both compliance, the feel of the soft matter, and the hydration of the soft matter, that glucopolysaccharide ground substance, that the extracellular matrix. And here you see adipose tissues embedded within that glucopolysaccharide ground substance. You see the vacuole there. That's fascia. And Leonid Bloom has a marvelous chapter in Jan's book on scars about the effect of soft tissue, of soft touch on soft tissue, and why soft touch is so much more effective on melting this any kind of resistance or congealing or condensation. Condensed dehydrated gel, we call them fascial restrictions, act as a dam. If this is a river of information in the crystal web, these fascial restrictions, the byproducts of inflammation, posture, trauma, gets infused within the nervous system and in the fascia, and it condenses that gel. And so it acts as a dam of this information flow. So the systems can't, and cells can't get the information that's needed to bring everything into balance. And as John's going to talk to you about in a minute, less restricted fascia is a better tuned instrument. There's less dampening of the strings. It's more open and resonant, and all the cells can talk with one another. Manual and movement therapists, hands-on or near, seem to affect the consistency of these fascial restrictions by way of mechanotransduction. Now, if that's a new term for you, mechanotransduction is studied in depth, and Donald Ingber is the person that you should look for in the literature. These are piezoelectric receptors on the membrane of the cell that are responding to the energy out of our hands with pressure all the way down through the bilipid membrane into the nucleus of the cell. And the cell then gets that information and the DNA responds. So every time we touch, nucleus of the cells underneath our hands are responding to the resonance of that touch. The piezoelectric pressure affects the flow by way of the Schwann cells, fascial cells, just underneath the skin. and mechanoreceptors. The Nobel Prize this year was won by the scientists that found the Schwann cells and were the link to the unmyelinated free nerve endings, the sieve nerve fibers that are associated with the interoceptive system. Fascia is a sensory organ. It doesn't just house sensation. It is a sensory organ. And that's the piezoelectric pressure conducts energy into the liquid crystal fascial matrix web, promoting the softening of type 2 gel and improving hydration. Movement therapies, on the other hand, tense and release the myofascia in rhythmic movements. They pull hydration out of the capillaries into the extracellular matrix, which lessens the stiffness of the gel and improves the compliance of the soft matter. So there you have it. The effect on organizing field, the holistic benefit to the system, enhanced cellular transmission and communication, the integrins, the fibroblasts, the telocytes, the immune system, all receiving the information from the cells that the energy is conveying, a decrease in stiffness and pain on pain-sensitive structures, a systematic from top to toe improvement in vibration of energy throughout the whole body, mind, and soul system. And then, as Joanne mentioned so beautifully, we get order and coherence and temporality and balance and holistic health, and things are working in synchrony with one another. And people feel a return to themselves, of themselves. I expected you to help my knee to feel better, but I never expected you to help me to feel more at one with myself, is what one of my very first patients said to me when I was a new myofascial Barnes myofascial release therapist. Holistic health. So, in sum, all creation vibrates, and vibrations are waves. Only about 4% of all that is known to us. So we're peeking in the dark into the mystery and trying to recognize what's the effect of these waves that we emit and what we are infused with. Fascia integrity is the structural and functional container of these energies. Resonance occurs, wanted or not, between the therapist and the patient or the client. Science reveals the effects of resonant information exchange. Manual and movement therapies can improve these effects by improving the flow of vibration through the living extracellular matrix to enhance system-wide holistic balance and integration, and the benefits of therapeutic resonance, facilitating balance and integration so the body can heal itself as it is meant to. So, in the future, my challenge to you, when you cross that threshold, stop, be silent, as Joanne invited us. Name it. I'm crossing the threshold. I want to be present in this moment, in this chronos. And I want to be present in such a way that as I enter this new space, may I see and be seen. May I touch and be touched. May I speak and be spoken to, and hear what I hear and what's between the lines. May I feel and be felt interoceptively. May I experience in wholeness and be experienced, that we both may become whole. Thank you, Dr. Carol Milligan and Joan Halifax. And thank all of you. My references are multiple. As you can see, people that I've mentioned, there's Jean-Claude's Strolling Under the Skin, Richard Hardy's video, and the Ashman work, Beverly Rubrick, wonderful biofield studies, Shapiro and Schwartz, and John Sharkey, Fascia Integrity, and and site-specific fascia tuning pegs, which John's going to talk about with us next. And in my book, Sanjita Singh talks about Reiki and biofield therapy. Oh, do you know my book? Let me plug my book, Integrative Therapies and Rehabilitation. This is the science behind integrative therapies. There's a whole chapter on fascia and biotensegrity in here, by Slack Incorporated. And then this whole concept of dark energy. I'm not just making that up, of course. And that's it. Now, let me stop my screen share here. There you are, all of you. Okay.
That was amazing, Carol. That was just so interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
So interesting, and so I think validating for people who,
yes,
I've seen some in the chat saying my mind is expanding. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, good.
And I did promote this day as a mind expanding, if not mind blowing day.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people here are
all of us,
understanding of ourselves as resonant beings, but other people have not understood that yet, and they're finding it out. And well done for joining us and being open-minded, because to me, you can't, if you cannot just treat the body. You can't treat the body. No. If you just try and treat the body, you're doing yourself out of the reward and the expansion, and everything comes from engaging in the energy field, and you're doing your client a disservice, because you're only treating half of them, or you can't. I mean, you can't separate the two, but with your mind not engaged in intention and attention, you're not just giving the full care that is possible.
Right.
It's such a shame, isn't it?
Yeah, well, there are benefits to all manual therapies, and but we know that when we focus like this, the benefit is and Jan, the other piece of this that I inferred, you cannot treat in this way without being treated yourself. True. And so at the end of the day, people say, "Aren't you exhausted?" And I would say, "No, I feel as if I've been in an all-day treatment, because I've been a conduit, so to speak, of the energy from the Akashic field, source energy coming through me and into out my hands, as you saw in that wonderful video, and then coming back to me. And when it's held in that specific kind of attention and intention of compassion and attention, it's like you're cleared out. I'm cleared out of contaminants, and I'm in resonance field with pure positive energy. And that is feeling healed ourselves.
Absolutely. And I think if you're really exhausted at the end of your day, I mean, personally, what I do after every client is I stop and I clear my energy field. There are different meditations and different imaging that you can use to do this. And then you're not carrying whatever you might have picked up from somebody onto the next person, and you're not taking it on board yourself.
Yes. Yeah. And it's, I go and wash my hands, and I have to leave my treatment room, wash my hands, and then come back in. And before I come back in, that's when I center myself. And I ask, may I be truly present like a curious cat? That's John Barnes' phrase. I'm borrowing it from him. Be like a curious cat, not deciding in advance what you're going to do, but listening. What is the fascia asking for in this moment? Yes. And the fascia will speak to us.
Yes. Yeah, I do that sometimes. I say, right, I think I'm going to work like this, work like this, work like that. And then I say, but of course it could all go differently.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Because the body might decide otherwise.
And for physical therapists, it's so hard for us, because we do our diagnostics, and then we go to the literature, we know how we ought to be treating, and we know what the science says, and we have in mind where the restrictions were. I'm going to start right here. And then we get the patient on, or the client on the table, and we think, whoa, they didn't look like that when they were standing up. No, wait a minute. And the whole thorax is rotated. Oh, well, I'm going to start here. And here we go into the rotation, and then out of the rotation, and everything goes out the window. And that's good treatment.
Yes. And that's truly resonating with your client.
Exactly.
Not inflicting, I'm going to say, inflicting a protocol. Upon them, a left brain protocol, but actually tuning in to your whole self, resonating with them and saying, where do you want my hands to go? Yeah. And that is also putting aside our ego as the fixer, the healer, isn't it?
Exactly.
And just saying,
Yeah.
I am simply a catalyst. I am
Yeah.
one little wheel in your great big machine of life.
Yeah.
You know, I'm one little wheel, grateful to be here. What can I do? And
Yeah.
it's a
When we're
difference in
young,
energy, changes the energy.
when we're young, we're trying very hard, and you're in our left brain trying to remember hand placements, trying to remember what to do next, trying to, is my hand placement right? And of course, when we're young and we haven't developed mastery yet, of course, we're going to be distracted by that. But as soon as you can get out of that, drop down into the essence of who you are and feel. Just let go. Just let go. And
trust.
And trust. And then as you develop mastery, it will come automatically. And then every day, every patient, every client's an adventure. I used to get a little concerned if I saw the diagnosis. Oh, gee, a child with cerebral palsy. I haven't seen a child with cerebral palsy. Hey, this is a biotensegral energy waiting for your influence and your attention. And I could just get rid of all the fear and just say, wonder what's going to happen now. Wonder what's going to happen in this next hour.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Detached curiosity. Oh, I wonder what's going to happen. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you, Carol. Well, we have heaps of questions for you. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. So Carmen asks, is frequency the main unit of measurement of these vibrations?
As a physicist, I would say that's the most common form of measurement of waves. Yes, the most common form. I think that there might be volume too. It depends on what you're hooked up to measure with. When you're measuring, for example, EMG, you hear the wave in the facilitator, so to speak. Joanne hears fascia, and I don't hear it. Barnes hears fascia, and I experience change in the resonance of the fascia with sweat beads. If I hit a pocket of potential energy that's being released, it comes up and I get sweat, and my head actually can get wet. As you saw Richard Hardy's hands getting very hot there. As the energy is released in heat, you see the color. So it's color and sound also are ways of measuring wave frequencies.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Okay, Helen asks, you spoke about the reduction in bone cancer cells versus the increase in osteoblasts.
Yeah.
Was the intention of the therapist to reduce the bone cancer cells, or was their intention more neutral? Thank you.
That's a very good question. The science did not say. The science inferred that the therapist was just intending and attending a helpful response, whatever that is, a helpful response.
Yeah.
Now, cancer is and Susan Finley has some comments on this. She runs a wonderful course on massage and manual therapy for cancer. There's a lot of controversy about treating patients with cancer. Barnes suggests that you treat the web, because when we treat the web, we are treating the cells that are going to be able to be helpful to the cancer. To not treat over the lesion itself, but to treat around the whole web with intention and attention to allow the web to handle the neoplastic cells. Mina Bissell, if you heard me speak before about breast tumors, Mina, Mina, Bissell, Bissell, has a TED Talk on solid breast tumors in rats, in normal fascia and in malignant fascia. They took tumor from a rat and put it in a petri dish with the fascia, and it grew. They took the same neoplastic cells and put it in normal fascia, not this fascia from around the tumor, and the tumor reverted to normal. Yeah. Very, very profound experiment that showed the communication between normal fascia end cells and abnormal fascia end cells. Nice. Neil might have something to say about this, because he is the pathologist that's looking at the interstitium, the area immediately around an organ that's responsible for metastasis of these cells. So we might be able to ask him that same question.
Oh, Right. And that could be maybe something that comes up on the discussion panel. If
Yeah.
anybody, you don't get your question answered, don't worry. Bring it to the discussion panel at 2000 tonight, because we have nearly an
Yeah, that'll
hour.
be fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be fun. Okay, we have a question from Zoltan. Sorry, from Andrea Zoltan, sorry. Carol, so if we assist, spend time with the client in becoming more mindful before we work with them, again, can this enhance the energy stroke resonance rather than being elsewhere with their thoughts once they come in? Oh, rather than them being elsewhere. So I think taking them to a place of maybe tranquility and intention
Making the connection.
was what Andrea's in asking about.
Yes, if you've done any work on vagus nerve and trauma patients, you know the environment, the color of the room, any sound and light is the more relaxing you can get, the more conducive to interoceptive reception of the healing energy. Their tone of voice, not talking really fast and then and being, well, tell me what happened next and what brought you to me. No, soft, gentle voice. Tell me what brought you to me. And then being open and listening, and everything about me communicating, you are safe here. And I will do nothing to cause you harm or to hurt you. You are totally safe. And before I place my hands on a patient, I say, now at any time, if you want me to remove my hands, I will. All you have to do is say, halt, and I will remove my hands immediately. You are in charge. And then you let the patient lead, all in the interests of patients feeling in charge and safe in your presence.
Yes, absolutely. Right. Well, so we have another question here. Do you know if the studies investigated more conventionally understood causal pathways rather than vibration? For example, if we have more attention in our hands, this will subtly but still physically connect more to the client's skin, just like a musician playing on their instrument with attention, without necessarily needing to draw on vibration and biofields.
My students used to ask me this. Gee, Dr. Davis, I really like this stuff, but do we have to believe in energy? I mean, can't we just do it with our hands? Of course. You don't have to believe in gravity either. It is a law of nature. And when we're talking about the amount of tension, Barnes very, very specific about his principles. Go down to meet the patient where they're at, not deeper or not more superficial. Go down to meet the patient where they push back. Take a breath and then separate your hands, tension and on an elongation. It's got compression and tension, and then weight. And whatever the fascia needs out of that compression or tension, it will use energetically. So you can talk about tension and linear, but you can't get away from the fact that the reason that tension and compression is working is because of biotensegrity. And what we're doing is offering a rebalancing of what's needed in the fascia over that area of fascial restriction at any one time. And the fascia takes that in, that tension and compression from our hands in, and uses it to balance itself, to make more volume, to get less stiffness, more compliance in the tissue, so that then the cells can talk to one another and the information flow can be opened up again. Sure, you can talk about lines of tension, but underneath it all, it's like we used to always study the diagram of the muscles. You know, fascia's separated. We see all the muscles, and as if that's the human being that we're studying. Well, there's energy in that too. But when you look at Alex Gray's picture representation of the essence, then when we're talking there, when we're speaking about this, when we're looking at our effect on this, it resonates out into that muscle linear aspect. But there's nothing linear in the body. everything is spiral, everything is tubes, everything is constantly moving and spiraling. And when we add tension, yes, that's adding something from the outside for fascia to respond to, just like it responds to gravity.
Yeah.
And then we get a response from the fascia. And what we want is a healing response. We want a response where restrictions are relieved, fascia reorganizes itself. And that reorganization doesn't stop when we stop our treatment. The reorganization will continue because our energetic input has given, oh, Jan, your wonderful phrase, fascia will find its way home. And it may be at the end of the treatment, it's on its way to finding its way home, but it might not quite be there yet. And so some of my clients and patients come in and say, I kept feeling this movement inside of me. And I lay down after the treatment, I lay down and I kind of unwound and it just felt good to move with it. Yeah, that's it. Fascia is finding its way home. Yeah. The most efficient configuration in any one moment. Fascia will hold us up. We should, Lena Bloom says, we should just collapse. Why don't we just collapse? We're made of snot, hydrated or whatever. No, and as Joanne says, the miracle is that we are upright and that we can breathe and we can intend in this moment with this marvelous interoceptive as well as psychomotor nervous system and this marvelous configuration of intention and attention throughout our whole lives until the moment we take our last breath.
Yeah. I love the way you talk about it, Carol. I find it's so fluid.
I love the experiencing of it. Yes. Yeah, and I love talking about it because it infuses my soul.
Yeah,
this is an answer that unfortunately the medical community is going to crash, and in its place, integrative healthcare is going to come, and this is going to be these scientific underpinnings are going to be the foundation of the new healthcare. Yeah. In hopefully, I'm not going to see it in my lifetime, but eventually, we're paving the way. We're out on the tip of the spear, all of us who are doing this work.
Yes, it will come. It is coming. Yeah. And it's exciting.
From your mouth to God's ears. Yeah.
Yes. It's exciting to be at the front of it all, isn't it?
It is. And it's exciting to be
together. Along on that wave of it, passion.
And Jan, you brought us all together, all of us, the audience and the speakers, you brought us all together so that we can celebrate this with each other at a time on our planet that we can only resonate goodness and joy and peace with each other and health with each other. And that's got to be very, very profound. Thank you, Jan.
Oh, my joy and pleasure. Mm-hmm. I'm enjoying myself so much. Okay, so we've got a little bit of time left. Samar asks, how do you describe empathy in the language of resonance? Can you do that, Carol?
Whoa. Summer knows that I did a whole dissertation on empathy. She's not asking for that. I can, very briefly, in a phenomenological view. Now, there are many definitions of empathy. Most often, you're thinking about putting yourself in the place of the other person. That's a kind of an intellectual crossing over. Phenomenological description of empathy, the experiencing of empathy, as described by Edith Stein, happens in 3 overlapping stages. First, you're lined up with the patient or the client, and you're listening. And you've got kind of a self-transposal. You're taking in, you're being very, you're listening very carefully. And then all of a sudden, your interoceptive nervous system lights up and boom, it goes from your head, your understanding, to your emotional recognition, from cognitive to affective. And you are consumed with a feeling of knowing what's happening with this person.
Yes.
And then there's pure identification. It's like you and the other are one. And you don't want to be there. You can't be there. You'll lose your therapeutic objectivity. So you say, wait a second, this is you and this is me. And you get yourself back. And that's sympathy. So self-transposal, followed by identification, followed very quickly by sympathy. That one package happens to us. You can't make it happen. That's why I maintain that you can't teach it. And this is paper that you can find if you Google what is empathy and can empathy be taught, with my authorship, Carol M. Davis, in Physical Therapy. What is empathy and can empathy be taught? When this happens between client and patient, you're listening very carefully, and you won't probably, in this phenomenological sense, empathize with all your patients. But there will be moments when you lose your boundary, and you and the patient are really one, especially in the energy. And that is pure empathy. You are in resonance, pure empathy. And then you get yourself back and you realize, whoa, this is me and this is you. But there's a dance to it that is just so exquisite, that dance. Happens between friends, happens between lovers a lot. It happens sometimes unexpectedly. It catches you by surprise. And in fact, it always happens to us. That's why Stein says it's primordially given, very much like forgiveness. You can want to forgive. You can want to forgive. Oh, I want to forgive. I don't want this bothering me anymore. I just want to let it go. And yet when the moment of forgiveness comes and you just let it go and you think, what was that all about? That's grace. That's an invitation from, I believe, source energy saying, okay, you've done your work. Just let go. And when you let go, it's gone. It's really gone. And that's the experiencing of forgiveness. It's the experiencing of falling in love, especially when you don't want to fall in love with this person at this time. Please. It happens to us. And then we have to decide what we're going to do about it. And the worst thing that a therapist and client can undergo is that identification and not getting yourself back. Because as John Barnes says, let go of the outcome. This is why it's so hard to treat our family. We want so much to make a difference. And in that wanting to make a difference, we interfere with whatever the fascia has in mind beyond our expectations. And so we have to learn to let go of the outcome. And so in empathy, we've got to get ourselves back. We've got to say, this is you and this is me. And we are not the same, but I, yes, am in resonance with you. And I want only your highest good. But if it comes, it comes. If it doesn't, I've enjoyed walking the path with you. I've done what I can. And then let it go. And don't feel guilty. This is all much bigger than all of us. Just let it go. So yes, Summer, thanks for asking that. I miss you. Summer used to be here in Maine and in Miami with me. That's empathy and patient care. I wrote a book about this. It's called Patient-Practitioner Interaction, an experiential manual for developing the art of healthcare. It's Slack incorporated. If you look on Amazon and look up my name, both of my books come up. Patient-Practitioner Interaction is the book, the manual to teach therapists and nurses and doctors how to interact with patients in such a way that the patient's values and choices are paramount. And we're not just fixing them. And it's how to communicate in uncomfortable situations. And it was a manual that I used as a textbook for my physical therapy students at the University of Miami and Boston University and the University of Alabama in Birmingham. All the places that I taught.
It's great. Great answers. Thank you, Carol.
My pleasure.
Time, attention, and intention to produce such a wonderful talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and we're going to see you again at 2000 for the discussion panel.
Yep. Great.
We're all looking forward to so much.
Yep. Good. Great.
Thank you. Bless you.
Bye. Thank you, Jane.
Well, that was just mind-blowing, wasn't it? So before we have a little break, we're just going to talk to you about an event coming up. The British Fascia Symposium, many of you will have heard of and many of you will have attended. We ran it every 2 years for 3 years running, for 6 years, 3 times, in England. And then in 2020, because of the pandemic, we went online and we turned a 2-day event into a 5-day event because we didn't know about conference platforms and breakout rooms, and we didn't know much about virtual stuff at all, but we did it, and we're the first to do it apparently, and it was amazing. And one of these days we'll have some in-person events again. But for the moment, we're going to be running the BFS 22 online. And although it would be nice to do in person in many ways, we have also got now this global community, and I know so few of you would be able to fly to England for a weekend. So the joy is that this information and our wonderful presenters and all the information they've got can go out around the world. For your CPD and for your information and to help you in your practice. As you can see, Carol Davis is one of our keynote speakers, also Gerald Pollack and Robert Schleip. The actual full agenda is not yet on the webpage, although you can buy tickets at the moment at the early bird price. The agenda will launch on the week commencing the 21st of March, and it's a really brilliant agenda. I'm not taking credit for that. I'm giving credit to all the amazing people who've submitted their proposals and been accepted through the selection process with myself and the rest of the committee, which is Kelly Clancy, Elizabeth Larkham and Susan Findlay. So it's been quite a process. It's been quite a thing because we've got 2 channels running, which is like 2 television channels, with different people on different channels and a series of breakout rooms. And we're going to bring a lot of human engagement in, a bit of fun, a bit of laughter, a few competitions, prizes, make it as much as like the in-person experience as we can. It's going to be the 20th to the 22nd of May, Friday to Sunday. Take a look at the webpage. You're on our mailing list now. Of course, you can unsubscribe at any time, but for the moment, you'll be on our mailing list as a webinar attendee. And so you will get information coming through by email. So keep your eyes open and we'll let you know when the agenda is fully launched. Thank you. And I just want to talk to you about our membership scheme. We are, as the Fascia Hub, we are a community and we are open to all. And many of you joining us today will not be members. We're open to everybody. And however, we do have a membership program for people who would like to be more involved, who really are hungry for fascia information, who would like an email every 2 weeks with information and reading, who'd like a monthly webinar included free with industry leaders speaking about aspects of fascia, who'd like discounts and offers, for example, for this webinar and for the British Fascia Symposium. We have offered, there have been lower prices for our members. And also we're going to bring as much community and networking opportunities together in the future. So we're doing our best to bring you together as a community, to network you with colleagues and to help you, to inform your practice really and help you develop as a fascia-focused practitioner. Okay, so that's our membership. You just go to thefasciahub.com and click on the membership tag and take a look. Okay.